If your really famous uncle was certifiably insane and dangerous, would you become a clinical psychologist? Well, Mary Trump did, and she will join us to discuss her new book, which is titled Who Could Ever Love You? Who Could Ever Love You? That's next. Here is a 78-year-old, to use his words, crooked, mentally impaired, lying, stupid man, talking about himself.
Crooked Joe Biden became mentally impaired, sad. But lying Kamala Harris, honestly, I believe she was born that way. There's something wrong with Kamala. And I just don't know what it is, but there is definitely something missing. She's a stupid person. Stupid person. I don't care. I don't care.
Joining us now is clinical psychologist Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece. She is the author of the new book, Who Could Ever Love You? A Family Member, which is now a New York Times on the New York Times bestseller list. Mary, thank you very much for joining us tonight. When you hear your crazy uncle talking about someone being crooked, mentally impaired, lying, stupid, what do you think?
I have the same reaction you have, Lawrence, and thank you so much for having me on tonight. It's like he's looking in a mirror every time he opens his mouth now. We've long known that Donald uses very frequently a defense mechanism known as projection, in which he takes things that he unconsciously knows about himself but can't bear and projects them onto other people. That has been happening with increasing frequency over the last, well, let's see, when did that happen? Yes, when Vice President Harris became his opponent for the presidency. It's really, really made him unravel in a way we haven't seen before. So clearly, it's not that she's getting under his skin because he couldn't figure out how to adjust to a new strategy and a new opponent. It's because she pushes his buttons in a way very few people ever have.
Did he drive you to it? Did your crazy uncle drive you to becoming a clinical psychologist? And I don't know why I haven't wondered about this before, but it hit me today. And I just thought, I think I might have to do that if I had an uncle who was that crazy.
Well, unfortunately, he wasn't the only one. I've said this before, but it bears repeating because I think well, hopefully it will make people think about the choices they make in their lives. Donald was one of 5 children. My grandparents had 5 children, and every single one of them, including Donald, is and was a destroyed human being. So as shocking as it may seem, Donald actually was not the worst person in my family. He's the worst one now because he has, unfortunately, power that continues to be bestowed on him by a bankrupt Republican Party and tens of millions of Americans. But, the whole family system was so broken from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding in this book, which takes it's a wider lens on it all, I found, than your previous book. You say this about your uncle. You say, nobody liked Donald when he was growing up, not even his parents. As he got older, those personality traits hardened, the hostile indifference and aggressive disrespect that he developed as a toddler to help him withstand the neglect he suffered at his parents' hands. You say Fred Trump, his father, was incapable of loving anybody.
Yeah, and it shows, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that my father's generation obviously suffered the most because they were closest to the sociopathy and severe psychological distress. My grandfather's sociopathy and my grandmother's own psychological and emotional issues. But it definitely filtered down. I mean, clearly none of us has escaped unscathed. And I think when you look at it from the perspective of not just being relatives, but being Americans. Donald Trump has been in a position to have an impact on everybody's daily life for almost 8 years now. And if you add into that this family dysfunction and the scars that have been inflicted by being a member of this family, it really does begin to take a toll.
This is a book that I know is written for contemporary readers, and the New York Times bestseller list is proving that. But I am sure the book I'm holding in my hands right now will be held in the hands of historians 100 years from now who are contemplating this man. And it's such a valuable asset. I say that as someone who has done a lot of study of President Franklin Roosevelt. And if there could have been a family member writing a volume like this about that family at that time and the branches of that family, it would just be invaluable, as this is going to be to history. Do you feel that pressure if it is, as you're writing this, that historians are going to be reading this for a couple of 100 years?
That's extraordinarily kind of you to say. I have never thought about it that way, but I do hope that my first book, which I consider a psychological history of a family, and this one, which is absolutely a very personal memoir together, will give people insight into how Donald became how he is and how we as a country found this acceptable, but also hopefully it will give us insight into, or I should say, validate our own experiences over the last 8 years. We're not going crazy. We should feel hurt and harmed by everything that's happened at this man's hands, and to be able to share my insight into how he became this way and the impact it's had on me and others, I consider it a privilege, actually.
The new book, which will be in libraries forever, is called Who Could Ever Love You? A Family Memoir. Mary Trump, thank you very, very much for joining us again tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you.